Sean,
Okay.
you've recently become chairman of AVEA, the Association of Visitor Experiences and Attractions. Congratulations on the role.
Thanks very much, Sean. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to working with yourself and many other representative groups in the sector. Tourism is an amazing industry. Obviously, I've been around it for a number of years, but really only involved in it since 2014 in terms of my role as CEO of the John F. Kennedy Trust. But yeah, AVEA was something that I had an interest from the start. Back in 2016. It was Paul Carty and Michael Coonan called a meeting in the Guinness Storehouse. And immediately I was interested in going because I would have felt at that particular point in time that, there wasn't the opportunity for the sharing of ideas, networking, and, the sharing of knowledge and expertise in the sector. And I found that people like myself were sort of always looking for that fountain of knowledge or that information or those resources. And I saw AVEA at that time and its formation as an opportunity to engage wider within the sector and with your peers in the sector. Yeah, certainly AVEA has been a great success story with over 100 members, and Paul was our first chairman, very successful. Everybody knows Paul Carty in the industry, and then Niall O'Callaghan took on the role last year, and we were sorry to see Niall moving out of the sector, but we will stay in touch with him. And then I was delighted to be asked would I take on the role as chair of AVEA this year, and in a particularly challenging year, as everybody knows.
Oh yeah, your timing is I don't know, remarkable. But
we'll give it our best. We'll do our best.
It's often underappreciated in a way that things to see and do, visitor attractions, experiences, cultural interpretations. That's why people come to Ireland, isn't it?
It is indeed, and I mean, obviously, the eastern side of the country, Ireland's ancient east, that proposition, the Wild Atlantic Way, and now the Hidden Heartlands, and Dublin itself. I mean, they have been huge drivers of the tourists around the country, and I mean, I would say that Fáilte Ireland's efforts in that respect have been very good in terms of trying to spread the visitor, in terms of engaging with them to try and keep people to the eastern side of the country, because I know that the Wild Atlantic Way does exceptionally well. But we would have thought that the attractions are part and parcel. They feed into the merchandising and I suppose the marketing of an area. Obviously, the hotels, it's important if families are coming for weekend breaks or people are coming on holidays to an area, that they have a choice of things to do. And I mean, Ireland is fantastic in that respect. We're so varied in terms of, our coastline, our beaches, and then the historic attractions that we have. The country is such a rich tapestry of historical sites, and then moving on from that into the modern day facilities and modern day attractions. And I think right across we offer, a fantastic experience for the visitor when they come. And then, of course, that permeates right down into our pubs and restaurants, our towns and villages, and, right through the whole country, whether it's the people who hire the car or take the coach hire option, they're visiting our towns and villages, and every time they stop, they're engaging with the community and they're spending money, which is the key to it all. But we just feel we have so much to offer, and it was refreshing, bad and all as the times were this year, to hear so many of the people who, the domestic market, with really positive comments. We've had a fantastic 7 days and so much quality attractions and things to do. And I mean, that's really encouraging. And I know that that's the case right around the country.
Yeah.
When I'm referring to my own region, it is the case.
I think Irish people sort of rediscovered the Irish tourism product this year. It might be the only sort of plus we can take out of 2020. You mentioned the JFK Trust, and the day job is Dunbrody Famine Ship Experience in New Ross. And I suppose that's a good example, isn't it, of a visitor experience, if you like, transforming a location, because kind of New Ross historically would have been sort of a drive-through town, but now there's a reason to stay. There's a reason for visitors to increase their spend in the area, and it's because of the attraction and the visitor experience at the heart of the town.
Exactly, and back in the late 80s, New Ross would have been, like you referred to there, a drive-through or a pass-through town for a lot of the traffic from the ferry from Rosslare. We were coming off the back of an industrial, very deep recession. New Ross was a largely industrial-based town with some large factories in it. So lots of jobs were lost, and lots of people had, moved away or emigrated from the town. So a group of business people and the Lions Club and the local council got together and identified, John F. Kennedy as obviously a world iconic figure that people could identify with and that they would know. And they decided to build a tourism story around the John F. Kennedy connection. And obviously it was an authentic connection. We had the Kennedy homestead. He'd visited in '63, and out of that was born the Dunbrody famine ship experience. And it launched. We'll be 20 years in business on the 11th of February next year, 2021. And we'd have had over 1 million visitors who would have stopped off in New Ross in that time. A huge contributor to the local economy, and then the catalyst for investment and development right around the region over the last number of years. And we've seen the quayfront in New Ross transformed. We have investment coming now in terms of the Greenway, which will facilitate the outdoors, and more promotional development of our river and the riverfront. And of course, we were huge beneficiaries of the large investment announcement last year in the Rural Regeneration Development Fund, which will see a €9 million investment in the town. So our objectives back 25 years ago were to create a tourism product for New Ross. That has developed into creating New Ross into a tourism destination town. And we've achieved that over the last 25 years. And at the end of a 30-year period, I suppose, of operation, we'll see New Ross as a destination town. We'll be building on the Kennedy homestead, which is in Dunganstown. We'll be redeveloping the Dunbrody famine ship experience, and a whole new visitor attraction building on the new concept and the rollout of the Norman Way, which is a new Wexford initiative, Wexford Tourism Initiative. So yeah, we're really proud of what we've achieved, and we've seen the results.
It's a great case study in many ways of how tourism can be an economic driver for regions, and I think kind of New Ross is a case in point in that regard.
It is indeed, and we would have had, obviously now we're down in terms of our employees, but across most of the COVID period, we've tried to retain and manage people between the TWSS or EWSS now, and we have some public supported staff, and then of course the wider community. So we would increase in the normal year. Our staffing would go up to about 50 people, but at the moment it's down to just 16. We'll say through the public and some people on the EWSS, but generally, we would put about €800,000 a year in wages direct into the economy. We would have a turnover of about 1.6 million, and a lot of that money and spend is where possible in the locality or with local businesses. It is it has a huge impact on the economy of a small town. And I know that our towns and villages are, they're the beneficiaries of tourism. It really is such an important industry, and we've seen that this year with. Last year, over 9 billion of return from tourism, brought down to 2 billion this year. I mean, it's shocking. It had a shocking impact.
Yeah, and just on that dreaded COVID impact, we're currently in the middle of level 5, which effectively means that the whole economy or large swathes of the economy have been shut down, including the wider and broader tourism industry. But even if we go back to level 3, as is anticipated on December 1st. Level 3 is still no good, is it, for visitor experiences and attractions? You're still effectively shut.
Yeah, and that's the real challenge for the attraction sector at the moment. Yeah, level 3, level 4, level 5, there is no difference for us. We're closed at all 3 levels. And I know that many of the attractions had invested heavily. We put, very, very detailed plans in place. We're very conscious of the way we operated across the summer. I know in our own case, we reduced the numbers on our tours. We had one entry, separate exit areas, provided all of the necessary material that was required in terms of sanitization and that, and worked really closely with Falch Ireland, got our COVID charters, and found ourselves then in October coming into being closed again under level 3. Level 3 has a huge impact, particularly as we head into December, because it's a time when a lot of the attractions, not all, but some of them have their Santa experiences. It's a good time for the restaurants if they're attached to the visitor attractions. And it's an opportunity to gain an extra bit of income and to generate footfall and income across that period between November and hopefully get you through to the end of January, as we then focus and pivot our ambition or business towards the season ahead. So yeah, it's difficult, and I know that it's an issue of huge concern at the moment to a lot of the attractions as to whether or not there's going to be the opportunity to reopen after the 2nd of December. The likelihood is if we go to level 3 and there's no derogation for our sector, is that a lot of the attractions will probably not be able to open until March next year. And, you know, that's a shame, you know, because then you have the challenge of retaining your staff and you have, you know, to deal with the cost of being closed, because there is a cost of being closed. And that's where we're all burning through any cash that we have. And while all of the grants are really beneficial to us and helpful, you know, there's a particular point in time where, you know, that maybe you'll run out of road and you'll run out of steam or in terms of finances. Okay.
Sean, what did you think of the recent budget and the tourism implications?
Well, first of all, I think I would welcome a lot of the measures in the budget were very positive for us. Certainly the reduction in the VAT, now albeit we're closed at the moment, but certainly when we reopen, it will make a big difference. The 9% had made a difference to the VAT, and I'm sure like many, we were disappointed to see it been removed a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's great that it's been reintroduced. I think that the CRSS will be very beneficial to some of the companies. Now, obviously, it's a challenge for some of the not-for-profits, and we're pursuing that to see if we can get clarity in relation to that. And most importantly, I think Fáilte Ireland, the new 55 million support fund that has been allocated to Fáilte Ireland, and I think that's one of the things from the sector that's important, that we continue to invest in the sector in both, you know, material way, and also invest in education, training and upskilling of the staff within the sector, so that we retain the skills and the people necessary for the recovery. So overall, I think the budget was very positive. You know, I want to acknowledge the efforts been made on our behalf, and I think it's really important from Fáilte Ireland and also Tourism Ireland, because I think Tourism Ireland, you know, have a big job to do overseas to make sure Ireland is to the forefront of that international visitor. Yeah. And I know Niall Gibbons and the guys are doing a great job in relation to that, and that's important also, that we don't lose sight of that. But I think overall positive from the budget, but you know, it's COVID is killing us. It's COVID has us closed, and you know, we have a fighting chance if we're open. And at level 3, level 4, and level 5, unfortunately, our sector is closed. So hopefully, there's some changes maybe introduced into that for December, or if not certainly early in the new year, to facilitate our reopening.
You used to be a politician, Sean. A lot of people will remember you were a TD and you were a minister of state. What's your view of how tourism is viewed within political circles? I suppose back in your time, but also more recently. I mean, one of the things I think we've done quite well as an industry this year is to highlight and amplify how disproportionately hit we have been by the COVID pandemic. So maybe we've got a bit more political traction in recent times, but over the years, we've always felt frustrated by the political classes that they haven't quite got tourism. Yeah,
well, I think, to be fair, back when I would have been in politics in the early 90s, we'd say from 2000 through to 2011, at that particular point in time, there was quite a level of investment through Fáilte Ireland and that in the tourism sector. And, you know, there was some large capital infrastructure grants. I mean, we would have benefited from some of those ourselves. We were lucky enough to do that. And I think, again, it was depending on, you know, TDs are sort of, you know, obviously they represent the people in terms of they're a, what's it like? I'm trying to think of the word they mirror, I suppose, the views and the ambition of people in the particular area. So clearly, if you're a county like Kerry and you have a minister or a TD that's involved, they're obviously going to be very focused on tourism. Whereas, you know, depending on the rest of the country, you know, ministers can be appointed from particular areas that may not have the same level of focus, and they may have a particular interest in another area, and that sometimes that may be taken from them. The other thing that can be frustrating is that ministers are appointed multiple folios. So like you could have a scenario where they're responsible for tourism, sport, trade, you know, a number of different things. And that's really difficult. I mean, from my experience, I had responsibility. I was a junior minister at agriculture, and I had responsibility for fisheries and forestry. Now, fisheries was a lot of European work, and then the forestry was in the domestic market. But just to deal with the sector alone took most of my waking day on top of your normal work. And then you see scenarios where, you know, you could have a minister with 5 or 6 folios that they're trying to manage, and that becomes very difficult. Well, I
think our current minister, Minister Catherine Martin, I think she has 6.
Yeah, that's really challenging, to be fair to her. But I do want to say that I was really impressed with both Minister Martin and with the Taoiseach in a recent engagement on the Tourism Forum. They certainly gave us 2 hours. They gave everybody the opportunity to speak and to outline our case. To be fair to the Taoiseach, I think that Leo gets tourism. He understands it. He had spent some time as a senior minister in it. So there's an understanding in it. And I think that that's also vitally important. But I think there's so many calls on him, and there's so much wrong at the moment in terms of stress, in terms of coping with the various sectors. And in particular, the fact that tourism and hospitality has been so badly impacted that certainly we're right up there in terms of at the top table in terms of requiring intervention at the highest level. And I think that they do realize also that the knock-on impact right across, as we mentioned earlier, from our airports right down to our towns and villages, that the impact that the COVID is having on tourism in general and on the economy is really dramatic. And it's very hard to generate, and I know, as I said, from my time in politics, to generate 7 billion is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do, and that's what we've lost. And to try and generate back that kind of level of investment and level of return on funding is hugely problematic. So I think they recognise the fact that, look, we've got to try and keep the sector, as I said earlier, in survival mode. We've got to keep them resilient, and we have to have the sector available and ready to go when the recovery comes. Because, I think that was part of the lessons would have been learned after the last economic collapse in 2008, that, a lot of the sectors like the construction and that were let go. And then it was very difficult to get ourselves back up. We have some amazing people in the tourism sector. We have some fantastic attractions. We have great organizations, and it's a really exciting industry to work within. And I think that, all of those talents combined should be the catalyst to try and make sure that we're in a position to take advantage of the recovery when it comes. But it's certainly going to be a very tough 12 to 18 months. And politically, we're going to need every support and every bit of help that we can get. So it's really important that, that all of the attractions and all of the various organizations that represent them stay in touch and lobby their TDs and ministers and public representatives to keep tourism at top of the agenda.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Sean, best of luck with the role, and thanks for your time today.
Oh, and it was great talking to you, and continued success to yourself and ITIC as well.
Thank you, Sean.